Screw Mario Day, today's Bowser Day. You know, get it? Because it's 8-4. Get it? Also, Bowser's turning 35 years old this year. So how about we talk about some terrible Bowser boss fights? No doubt, Mario is the most recognizable video game character, which would also make Bowser the most recognizable video game villain of all time. The issue is, being recognizable doesn't always mean you'll have the best boss fights. With how many times you fight Bowser, there are going to be some fights that aren't as good as others. This also comes from the issue of Bowser and his fights being somewhat simplistic. Sure, Bowser has some really great fights, but not all of them will be at that same standard. I'm not saying Bowser's a bad villain, nor am I saying he's a good one. I'm just saying that some of his fights are really bad, and there's enough to talk about in a countdown. If I see an opportunity, I take it. The focus of Super Mario Odyssey was on the journey, traveling to different kingdoms and experiencing the lands. Boss fights kind of took a back seat because of this. Sure, there are some kingdom-specific boss fights and the Brutals, who you can, for the most part, skip, but you can tell that they aren't too big in the game. Hell, they just reuse a lot of boss fights throughout the games, and one of them was Bowser. You fight him halfway through the main game, where it becomes a game of arms, plus jumping over fiery attacks and punching rocks. Sure, it works for a midpoint boss, but don't do the exact same fight, but slightly more difficult for the final boss. It was a lazy decision, especially since the fight was used 3 times because there were also boss rematches. It's too easy and just gets easier, especially when you already experienced the fight. Why not use the different terrains to the advantage of the battle? Make Bowser's jumps take away part of the cloud, or maybe have Bowser's fire breath make pillars of fire that stay throughout the whole fight. Do something to at least change up the fights a bit. Super Mario Galaxy 2 is a game that feels like Super Mario Galaxy DLC and was sold as a full-price game. Yeah, this game is a huge copy and paste of the original Mario Galaxy, except it has green stars, and Yoshi, and a new final boss. That was a bit of a letdown, though. At least this wasn't a carbon copy and delivered a pretty interesting fight. For the most part. The first phase did reuse some ideas, but that didn't stop it from being a good fight. The final phase is what makes this one of the weaker Bowser fights. Because they want to make the ending seem dramatic, the final phase has the player ground pound meteors at Bowser enough times until he's defeated. Doesn't sound too bad? Well, what if I told you that you can't die here? There is no challenge at the end, making this pretty worthless. Everything in this last scene could have just been a cutscene. Look at how the first game handled the final phase. It gave you more fighting, and gave Bowser a ton of new attacks and a new weakness. This is just dumb. Maybe they should have copied a little more from Galaxy 1. As stupid as that sounds. Super Mario Sunshine has its haters for a few reasons. Terrible physics engine? Check. Tons of glitches? Check. A stupidly frustrating final level? Check. Bowser in a hot tub? Check. Wait, what? Bad voice acting? Check. All of these play a role in what makes the final boss fight in Super Mario Sunshine so bad. Coronavirus Mountain is such an annoying level. You have to travel through insta-kill lava in a sensitive-to-control boat, while also going on platforms that have insta-kill spikes and flames. This would make you believe that the boss fight coming up would be just as hard, if not harder. Nope. Your reward for getting past Corona Mountain is a boss fight where the boss is in a hot tub and you beat him by breaking the hot tub. It's such a letdown. But wait, it's also super easy, minus the fact that glitches are what add difficulty to this fight. Not Bowser's attacks, the glitchy physics engine. Sometimes when you ground pound on one of these 4 spots, because that's all you need to do to win, the debris will bring you down with it, as there's no way to jump past them. As for the voice acting, I don't know, I just think it's pretty bad.
Mario! How dare you disturb my family vacation?
Not Hotel Mario bad, but still, not good at all. I didn't want to put the first Bowser boss fight here because it was an experimental boss fight. Sure, it's bad in today's standards, but Nintendo has learned how to improve from it. Except when they made New Super Mario Bros. That name suggests a different experience, not the same boss fight. But what we got was the exact same boss fight. But wait, there's also a fight with Bowser and Bowser Jr. Well, great. Instead of using the same old boss fight, you have the same old boss fight and the same boss fight you had with Bowser Jr. at the same time. And that's it. New Super Mario Bros. My ass. Before you ask and or complain, it is completely fine to put a Bowser fight in a Yoshi game here because they are still official Bowser boss fights. With that covered, let's talk about Yoshi Topsy-Turvy. This was an obscure Yoshi game that used gyro controls. No wonder it was forgotten. As for fighting Bowser, you have to worry about too many obstacles that are made easier or more likely more difficult based on the gyro controls. In this fight, you're supposed to have these bombs hit Bowser, but you have to control them with the gyro, while also using the gyro to avoid enemies. And also, enemies, bombs, and Bowser's Fire Breath take away way too much of your health. Then you have the final phase where you have to keep rocking your GBA back and forth to make Bowser fall into lava. Fighting bosses with gyro controls isn't all that fun or interesting. If you've seen my previous countdowns, let's face it, you probably haven't, you might remember that the final boss of New Super Mario Bros. Wii is my favorite Mario boss fight. It's epic, memorable, and keeps you on your toes. I feel like this boss fight really started the genre of Bowser boss fights where it starts with the original, then has a giant Bowser fight. It does get a bit repetitive, but some of them at least do something new and fun. New Super Mario Bros. 2 itself takes old concepts and makes them disappointing. What do you expect from a game where the main theme is collecting coins? So what does the final boss look like? You've got the commonly repeated first phase, so what's next? Another platforming boss fight where you have to avoid Bowser. Now yeah, that's been done before, but it uses the same music as the fight from New Super Mario Bros. Wii and takes away everything that made that fight good. Bowser stays in one spot in the background rather than you running for your life as he chases you. Also in that fight, you needed to use Bowser's attacks to progress, but here all you do is dodge very slow swipes. It also doesn't offer anything new. The New Super Mario Bros. Wii one did, and it worked. This fight doesn't. Just jumping on falling platforms, avoiding something, and hitting a switch. It's a boring ripoff, nothing more. Now here's a bit of a question. Do I count all 4 phases that include Baby Bowser and the real Bowser, or do I just use the 2 phases with the regular Bowser? I'll just do Bowser, but that doesn't mean I won't tear the Baby Bowser phases apart as well. Remember that outstanding boss fight against Baby Bowser in Yoshi's Island? This fight does the exact same thing, except way less intimidating and a lot less fun to experience. It was bad enough with that. They should have just quit while they were ahead. But nope, we get Bowser suddenly warping through space and time somehow, and starts out with a phase that, while it is original, it's also super boring. But hey, we also have one more phase, and what the fuck? It wasn't bad enough to rip off the original boss fight once, you had to do it twice? You can't just hide in the shadow of your previous success. Especially not twice in the same game. Someone please tell me, how the fuck do people not include the final boss from Hotel Mario in these countdowns? Of course there would be a terrible final boss in the worst Mario game of all time, but how do more people not talk about it? The final boss is just like any other boss fight in this game. They're just like all the regular levels, except there's only one enemy. And let's not forget how you play this game. Your job is to close doors in these hotels while enemies try to open them. And you for some reason die if they're all open. Shouldn't that be the other way around? Shouldn't the Koopalings want to maintain their hotels while Mario tries to go through opening them all and search for Princess Peach? Alright, whatever, let's just see Bowser. What the fuck is this? Why does Bowser look like he has the big head cheat on? Okay, never mind, that was just another Koopaling. Sure, he gets fixed in the second phase, mainly because the first phase was just a Koopaling, but he doesn't look too much better. Well great, the fight isn't only boring, it's also ugly! What benefits did Nintendo see in teaming up with Philips again? Is it possible to make the original boss fight with Bowser even worse? Apparently, it is! Especially if you try and make a Bowser boss fight on a phone. Super Mario Run was a very interesting and pretty good idea, but Bowser boss fights here are even more simple. You just wait, do a few jumps at the right time, and you win! No free movement, just sitting and waiting for an opening. Now yes, these fights aren't against the real Bowser. In fact, the final boss fight against Bowser is really creative and uses the game's mechanics really well. Oh wait, this isn't the final boss. This is. Literally the exact same as the decoy Bowser fights. Why even use this fight again? I'd rather fight his clown car fight on Mario Must Die mode than go through this brain-dead fight again. Did you know there's a Bowser boss fight where failure is impossible? Well, we have Mario's time machine to thank for treating children like beings incapable of solving problems on their own. I mean, early children nowadays, sure, but come on. It's expected that the worst Bowser boss fight would be one where it looks like a real boss fight, except you can't take damage, is beaten by jumping on its head 3 times. Yet, Bowser's usually the boss you can't kill using this method, and is the final boss in an educational game. They could have had something interesting for the final boss, but you have to remember that this is an educational game that doesn't penalize you for answering incorrectly. Why give him attacks if he can't even hurt you? Why not give the player something entertaining to go along with this learning? Why make it like all the other boss fights in this game and the previous game? Also, I should probably also point out that this only happens in the NES version. The SNES version and the MS-DOS version only have a cutscene rather than a final boss fight that show either Bowser escaped to paradise, stranded in the Jurassic era, or also stranded in the Jurassic era, except he also gets squashed. I'm not sure which is less satisfying, any of these endings or the final boss fight in the NES version. You know you fucked up when that question becomes difficult to answer.